In 1985, the Museum of Modern Art put out an exhibition, an international survey of recent paintings and sculptures. Out of 169 artists featured, only 13 were women. To make things worse, the curator was quoted as saying, any artist not included should rethink his career. This blatant bias was the spark that ignited the Guerrilla Girls. The Guerrilla Girls began with the traditional protest route, but quickly realized that wasn't getting them anywhere. They needed a new approach, something bolder, something that would actually grab people's attention. That's where the guerrilla masks and pseudonyms come in. They embraced anonymity, donning guerrilla masks and taking on the names of deceased female artists like Frida Kahlo and Kat Kolowitz. Anonymity in a world obsessed with fame, especially in the art world where well-established artists are treated like celebrities, was a radical act. They flipped the script. The focus couldn't be on them as individuals. It had to be on the message. And by adopting the names of historically overlooked female artists, they honored them and brought them back into the conversation. It was a powerful statement on multiple levels. Their main weapons were posters and stickers. Bold graphics, startling statistics, and biting humor were plastered in public spaces, even on the walls of museums. It was impossible to ignore. This wasn't theory or abstract rhetoric. They took their message directly to the public, right where it couldn't be avoided. Their work often made people uncomfortable or even angry, especially given the content. One of their most famous tactics was something they called weenie counts. They would walk through museums like the Met and count the number of nude figures in the artwork. In one gallery full of nudes, 95% were female, but only 5% of the artists were women. They put this data directly on their posters in stark black and white, making the disparity impossible to deny. Simple, yet devastating in how clearly it exposed the issue. The Guerrilla Girls weren't afraid to name names. They called out galleries, museums, and even prominent critics for their biases and lack of diversity. Their data-driven approach wasn't just about numbers, it was about accountability. Unsurprisingly, this directness made them some enemies along the way. There's reason to believe some of those enemies may have even tried to unmask them. But even decades later, the Guerrilla Girls have managed to maintain their anonymity, which is remarkable in our hyper-connected digital age. In interviews, including one with the Tate Channel, they still appear masked. This is not just about secrecy, it's a political and artistic choice. As I said earlier, by remaining anonymous, they force audiences to engage with the message, not the messenger. It challenges the world's obsession with people's identity as a measure of value. In essence, they're saying the issues matter more than who we are. Their tactics were so effective because they were a mix of art, activism, and clever media strategy. In the broader culture context of the 1980s, this was particularly striking. The feminist movement was experiencing what some considered a lull after the intense activism of the 1970s. Meanwhile, conservative politics dominated the mainstream, with Reagan-era policies reinforcing traditional gender roles and cutting funding for the arts. The Guerrilla Girls refused to let that silence continue. They didn't just protest exclusion, they redefined what protests could look like. Their activism was visually compelling, often funny, and always sharp. They didn't just challenge the system, they embarrassed it, publicly and unapologetically. As their platform grew, so did their focus. They began addressing broader social and political issues like homelessness, abortion rights, and even the Iraq War. They used the same mix of facts, humor, and striking visuals to make their points. It was savvy. By building a platform rooted in the inequalities of the art world, they created a springboard to confront injustices in other areas of public life. This showed how their model of activism could be flexible and expansive without losing its original focus. Despite their message of unity, however, the Guerrilla Girls weren't immune to internal conflict. Disputes over leadership and the trademarking of their name led to real tension and even lawsuits. This internal struggle might seem at odds with their outward message, but it adds a layer of realism to their story. Movements are made up of people, and people disagree. That's part of what makes their legacy so interesting. Those conflicts eventually led to the formation of distinct guerrilla groups that all act under one name but continue their work in their own ways. This branching out and the expansion and incorporation of multiple people is a testament to their adaptability and to the lasting relevance of their mission. Different groups can address different topics and reach different audiences. Their ideas have taken on a life of their own, proving that the message was always bigger than any one version of the group. They sparked a conversation about gender and racial inequality in the art world, and their impact stretches far beyond it. Museums have changed, at least on the surface. Now, more women artists are being shown. More women are running galleries. Diversity is now part of the conversation in ways it wasn't before. But it would be naive to assume the work is done, and even more naive to think those changes happened in a vacuum. The Guerrilla Girls played a part in making that happen. Their posters, once dismissed as radical their posters, once dismissed as radical or subversive, now hang in the very museums they once criticized. That shift raises complicated questions. Is it progress when a radical critique becomes part of the institution? Or is it a form of co-option, where dissent is absorbed just enough to neutralize it? It's a tension that all activist artists eventually face. Can you change the system from within? Or do you have to remain on the outside to maintain your power? Even now, the Guerrilla Girls continue to wrestle with that question through their work. They've never lost their edge. They continue to create new projects, push new boundaries, and stay anonymous, all of which contributes to their ongoing influence. The poster that asks, "Do women have to be naked to get into the Met Museum?" remains iconic. Its brilliance lies in its simplicity, its sharp wit, and its anonymity. If we knew exactly who made it, it would feel more like a personal protest. But because we don't, it feels like a collective reckoning, a broader indictment of the system itself. Their approach is strategic, not just provocative. Over the years, their methods have evolved, from wheat pasting in Soho to projecting messages onto museum walls. They found new ways to disrupt public spaces and spark conversation. They're masters of visual communication. The gorilla mask is a perfect example. Instead of a soft, traditional feminine face, you get something raw and primal. It forces you to rethink everything you associate with femininity and power. Their artwork, Advantages of Being a Woman Artist, shows how they mix wit with urgency. If you're a woman reading it, you might laugh, but that laugh comes with discomfort. It invites you to reflect and question, and underneath the humor, there's real data. They've always backed their claims with hard facts, turning information into a tool for change. What's particularly striking is how their work has influenced new generations of activist artists. Many of today's collectives, especially those working online, borrow tactics first used by the Guerrilla Girls. The emphasis on anonymity, the use of sharp infographics, the blending of humor and outrage. These are now staples of social media activism. Whether it's feminist meme pages, digital protest art, or TikTok creators using whether it's feminist meme pages, digital protest art, or TikTok creators using visuals to call out inequality, the Guerrilla Girls' fingerprints are everywhere. They pioneered a model that's still effective in today's attention economy. Make it bold, make it funny, make it true. The Guerrilla Girls have shown us that art can be a weapon, that satire can expose injustice, that anonymity can be power, and most importantly, that protests don't have to be loud to be heard. Even in masks, they've made their voices resonate for nearly 4 decades, and they're not finished yet. If you liked this video, consider subscribing to Her Story Behind the Canvas, where we explore the hidden histories of female artists who shaped the world, whether or not the world remembers them. Thanks for watching.